Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from the sources you share, helping you become instantly well-informed. Today, we are taking on a really crucial mission. We're diving into the decision-making process for early childhood education. Specifically, we're navigating the different education boards for kids aged, 0 to 6?
Yeah, and this is the exact point where modern parental anxiety just, it peaks.
Yep.
We see it every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
Parents are asking this question, and I mean, sometimes before the child is even 3. Which board should my 3-year-old join?
Right. Is it CBSE? Should I be looking at IB? What about the local state board? Is that, good enough? Do I need an international preschool?
Exactly. And the anxiety is completely understandable. I
Yeah.
get it. It's rooted in this really pervasive fear that if you don't pick the right brand early,
You'll somehow mess up.
you'll mess up, or your child will lose some kind of crucial advantage. They'll fall behind before the race has even started.
That pressure is immense. The pressure to, to brand your child's education from birth. It forces parents into this role of being consumers of education labels, not architects of a learning environment.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So let's just cut right through that. For everyone listening who is at this exact crossroads, whether you're a parent or a new educator trying to find some clarity, what is the one fundamental truth that cuts through all that panic?
Okay, this is the essential anchoring truth. The principle that should guide every single decision you make at this stage. Between the ages of 0 and 6, boards do not shape children.
Okay.
Their environments do. The structure, the syllabus, the brand on the sign outside, all of that is secondary.
So what really matters then?
What truly matters is the quality of the interactions between
Oh.
the child and the adults, the emotional safety they feel, the intentional sensory-rich experiences they get every single day.
Wow. That immediately reframes this entire conversation, this entire deep dive.
It has to.
So our goal today isn't to rank CBSE against ID. Our mission is to help you, the listener, design a development-first strategy for these early years.
Yes.
To help you move away from that status anxiety and focus on tangible foundational growth, no matter what board the school happens to have.
Precisely. Let us help you become a conscious architect of your child's learning journey. You have to understand the profound psychological and neurological needs of this phase before you even start looking at a curriculum.
Okay, so let's start right there. Part 1. Why do these ages, 0 to 6, matter so much?
To really get it, we need to dissect the common assumptions that fuel all this anxiety. I call it the early years mistake.
The early years mistake, okay?
It's basically 3 core beliefs, rooted in competition, that end up undermining the whole foundational process.
I think I know these. I hear them constantly. The first one has to be this deep belief that the earlier you start formal academics, reading, writing, the bigger the advantage later.
The acceleration push,
Yeah.
yes. Parents enroll toddlers in these highly structured, sometimes desk-bound programs because they're terrified a developmental gap will open up if they wait.
And the second one, this is a big one in India, the belief that English medium automatically equals intelligence.
Yes, the conflation of the medium of instruction with innate aptitude. It's this idea, especially strong in urban areas, that English guarantees success.
And it often leads to parents devaluing the mother tongue in those first crucial years.
Which we will definitely come back to.
And the third mistake.
The third, and this is the one that leads to, frankly, childhood burnout, is the assumption that highly structured learning means readiness for school.
You mean worksheets, rigid schedules?
Worksheets, comparing kids' progress, that kind of thing. They equate academic rigor with being prepared.
Okay, so those narratives are incredibly powerful. But what does the science say? What's actually happening in a young child's brain before age 6?
This is the critical part. From a neuroscience perspective, the brain has a completely different priority list. Before age 6, a child's brain isn't focused on what facts they'll learn later. It's meticulously laying down the physical and psychological infrastructure for how they will learn for the rest of their lives.
That's a powerful idea. Building the operating system for lifelong learning.
Exactly. It's the OS.
Yeah.
And if you rush it or you compromise it, you're setting up faulty core processes. It doesn't matter how great the curriculum is that you try to install later.
So what are these essential foundations? The things that no syllabus, no matter how prestigious, can ever replace?
We have to systematize these. There are 5 of them. And this is the real curriculum every parent and educator should be obsessing over.
Okay, number 1.
Firstly, emotional regulation. This is everything. It's the ability to manage big feelings, to tolerate frustration.
To not have a meltdown when something doesn't go their way?
Yes. to understand and express their needs in an appropriate way, and maybe most importantly, to be able to calm themselves down. A child who is chronically anxious or who can't regulate simply cannot learn.
Their brain is too busy just trying to cope.
It's too busy managing internal chaos to access higher order thinking, like, paying attention or problem solving.
That makes so much sense. But how do you teach that? You can't give a worksheet on emotional regulation.
No, you can't. It's fostered through consistent, calm adult modeling. It means you set clear, kind boundaries.
Like what?
Like, you teach them to tolerate the word no without it becoming a huge tantrum. It's that constant, gentle message from the adult that says, I see you're angry. I'm here. We can manage this big feeling together.
So the adult acts as the child's external regulator until they learn to do it themselves.
You've got it. That's the mechanism.
Okay, what's the second building block?
Language confidence. And notice I say confidence, not fluency in a specific language like English.
Ah, that's a key distinction.
It's about the ability to express needs, to ask questions, to tell a little story, to have a meaningful back and forth, using whatever their primary language is.
So it's about the function of communication, not just the vocabulary list. The ability to think through language.
Precisely. If a child can explain a complex thought in their mother tongue, like why their block tower fell down, they have built the cognitive structure they need to transfer that same complexity to any other language later on. The structure is the key.
Okay, number 3 is my favorite.
It's the most magical one. Curiosity. That innate, relentless, just joyous drive to explore and experiment with the world.
The why phase.
The why phase. Curiosity is the true engine of all future learning. And if we extinguish that engine by demanding only rote answers or by punishing questions that disrupt the schedule,
then you kill the desire to learn.
you compromise their ability to initiate their own learning. They become passive receivers of information.
So how does a teacher protect that curiosity?
You shift from giving answers to asking open-ended questions. Instead of saying, this is a rectangle, you might ask, I wonder why this shape doesn't roll like the ball does.
That one little shift invites them into the investigation.
It scaffolds them into becoming active, self-directed thinkers.
Okay, 2 more. These seem more physical.
They are. Fourth is motor coordination. This covers both fine motor skills, like holding a crayon, and gross motor skills, like running and climbing.
And these aren't just about PE class.
Not at all. They are directly linked to cognitive mapping, sensory integration, and, critically, self-confidence. A child who struggles to control their own body often struggles with confidence in the classroom.
Okay, and the final piece, the one that holds it all together.
Social trust. This is the ability to form secure, meaningful attachments, to understand basic social rules, like taking turns, and to fundamentally trust that the adult world, their parents, their teachers, is stable, predictable, and safe.
And without that trust.
Without that trust, a child spends way too much cognitive energy just assessing for threats, which leaves very little room for actual learning.
That is such a clear, actionable list. It's the real curriculum.
It is.
So now we have to talk about what happens when we ignore it. The danger of early pressure. The common wisdom is push them now, they'll get ahead. But you're saying the opposite happens.
What happens is it's insidious. On the surface, the child might meet some external metric early. They might read a few words before their peers.
And the parents feel great about that.
Of course. But that short-term performance often comes at the cost of developing what we call a core developmental fragility.
Fragility. Explain that.
When learning is forced through pressure, comparison, and rigidity, the child develops anxiety, a deep fear of making mistakes, and a crippling dependence on external approval. They need the adult to say, good job, to feel okay.
So they're learning to perform the curriculum. They're not learning to love the process of discovery.
Exactly. We accidentally create fragile learners, not strong ones.
And what happens when those fragile learners face a real challenge later on?
They often retract. When they face something that's ambiguous, something that requires real innovation, or something where they might actually fail, they back away. They haven't built the internal confidence to handle a setback.
Because their early environment taught them that the goal was to get the right answer, not to explore the question.
Performance over process, yes.
This is so critical. It completely reframes that initial anxious question from the parent.
It has to. The parent needs to stop asking, which board is better? Which one is faster or more prestigious?
And instead, they should be asking.
They must pivot and ask, which environment allows my child to feel secure, curious, and confident?
Because security builds emotional regulation.
Curiosity fuels the drive to learn.
And confidence lets them try and fail and learn from it.
That is the true metric of a strong learner who will be ready for any academic challenge you throw at them later.
Okay, that is a powerful framework. Now let's apply it to the actual options on the table, starting with the biggest one in India, CBSE.
Let's do it.
So CBSE, it's really the institutional backbone of Indian schooling, right? It's the default choice for so many, the safe, stable, practical path.
Absolutely. Especially for families who know they'll be staying in India long term or those who might move between states. That curricular continuity is a huge advantage.
And that stability has been, well, completely redefined, at least on paper, by the National Education Policy, the NEP 2020.
It's so important to understand the NEP overhaul because its vision for the early years, it aligns almost perfectly with the foundational principles we just laid out. It's an attempt to formally bake those 5 building blocks into the national curriculum.
So what are the actual policy changes? How does the NEP structure the beginning of a child's education?
Okay, so the big structural change is the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 framework. And the first part, the 5, is what's critical for our conversation.
Right.
This establishes what's called the foundational stage, which covers ages 3 to 8. So that's 3 years of pre-primary, what they call Balvatika, followed by Class 1 and Class 2.
And that's a huge shift because it formally recognizes the preschool years as part of the system.
It's monumental. It says these years are integral. They demand a curriculum designed for development, not just for getting kids ready for Class 1. It creates continuity right up to age 8.
And how does the policy try to enforce that developmental focus?
Through 2 key mandates. First, a clear emphasis on play-based and activity-based learning. This is the official way knowledge is supposed to be acquired now. It's a direct move away from the old rote learning culture.
And the second?
The second is a huge push for foundational literacy and numeracy, or FLN. The goal is to make sure that by the end of this stage, children have mastered basic reading, writing, and number sense.
But isn't that just a return to academics?
But here's the crucial difference. It must be acquired through experiential, hands-on methods, not just memorization. The commitment to reducing rote expectations is built into the policy. On paper, it's revolutionary.
On paper, that's always the key phrase, isn't it?
It is, because we know that policy gives the direction, but it's the school's culture that determines how it's actually implemented. So we need a serious ground reality check.
The variability between 2 CBSE-aligned preschools could be enormous.
It is vast. The outcomes are dictated by the school's leadership, the individual teacher's training, and frankly, their actual belief in this philosophy.
Okay, so let's paint a picture of both realities for a parent. What does a positive implementation of the NEP framework look like in a CBSE school?
A positive implementation is a school where the leadership genuinely believes play is the highest form of learning. You walk in and you see them using stories, music, movement as the primary teaching tools.
What does the classroom look like?
You'll see learning centers. A block corner for engineering, a sensory table for science, a dramatic play area for social skills, and critically, kids are given long, uninterrupted blocks of time for free play.
And the teacher's role?
The teacher's a facilitator. They're scaffolding the learning by asking those intentional questions we talked about earlier. I wonder what would happen if.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Now, what about the challenging implementation, the one that still has the CBSE label on the door?
These are the schools that have updated their brochures but are still clinging to the old, rigid methods. They'll talk about play, but really they're pushing early reading and writing to show off to parents.
And the classroom vibe is different.
Completely. The priority is compliance. Sit still. Follow instructions without question. And the biggest tell is the reliance on endless, repetitive worksheets. The kind that demand mechanical repetition, not thinking.
Can you give me a really practical example of the worksheet difference?
Sure. In a challenging school, a 3-year-old gets a worksheet and has to trace the letter A 50 times. It's a test of stamina and obedience, nothing more.
Right.
In a positive NEP-aligned school, the A activity might be a big tub of sand. The teacher asks the child to find hidden objects that start with the A sound apple, alligator, and then they trace the letter in the sand with their finger.
Same letter, completely different experience.
The learning is embedded in a sensory, meaningful context. It builds curiosity and motor skills at the same time. The context is everything.
That makes it so clear. So when it's done right, what are the genuine strengths of a good CBSE early years program? What does it build in a child?
First and foremost, it establishes a sense of routine and comfort. with structured settings. Kids learn to handle transitions, they understand a daily schedule, and that predictability makes them feel secure.
But doesn't that structure also create anxiety? The whole sit still and listen thing?
That's the difference between healthy structure and rigid structure. A healthy structure is predictable. Circle time always follows snack time. But it also has movement and variety built in. It's a frame, not a cage.
And that frame helps build another skill.
It does. Develop listening skills and group dynamics. They learn how to be part of a large group, which is a key skill for the rest of their schooling in India.
And the academics, the FLN part.
When done experientially, they build a really solid early numeracy sense and foundational literacy. They understand that 5 isn't just a symbol, it's 5 actual things.
And the biggest benefit is probably the transition to primary school.
It's seamless. Because most primary schools in India follow a similar structure, the child adapts with very little stress.
So, stability is a huge asset when it's done right. But what's the big risk that parents need to watch out for? The thing that can creep in even in a good school?
The biggest risk is that pervasive academic pressure, the comparison culture creeping back in. It's often driven by the demands of the older grades or just by the anxiety of other parents.
And what does that look like?
It looks like homework being prioritized over play. It looks like schools comparing kids' reading levels. The minute a school starts treating play as just free time or a break instead of an essential part of learning,
Then you know they're compromising the foundation.
regardless of what the policy says.
So the parent's role is to be a defender of childhood.
An active defender. You have to ask direct questions. How much uninterrupted time is there for child-led play every day? How do you handle it when a child makes a mistake? If the answers point towards compliance as the main goal, that's a huge red flag.
Okay, so CBSE can be a great, stable option, but it all comes down to the school's culture and the parents' vigilance. Now, let's pivot to the other big name that gets a lot of attention, especially in cities. The International Baccalaureate, or IB.
The global framework.
The global framework.
Yeah.
So the IB, and specifically the primary years program, the PYP, it just feels different. What's the core philosophy there?
The philosophy is fundamentally rooted in constructivism. It's this idea that kids actively construct their own knowledge by making sense of their experiences.
So it's less about the teacher delivering information.
Much less. It's about student agency and inquiry. And it's built around 3 core principles. First, the curriculum is driven by inquiry through play. Learning happens because of the child's questions, not because they're on chapter 3 of a textbook.
The teacher's role then is more of a guide.
A facilitator, yeah.
Yeah.
They observe the child's interests and then create experiences where the child can investigate those interests further.
But how does that work without standard subjects like math or science? How is it structured?
That's the second principle. The IBPYP uses transdisciplinary themes instead of subject silos. There's 6 of them. Big global concepts like who we are or sharing the planet.
So a single project could involve science, art, and language all at once.
Exactly. They explore the big idea, and the math and literacy are integrated into that investigation. It's about exploring concepts, not memorizing facts.
That sounds like it demands a lot from the child, cognitively speaking.
It does. Which brings us to the third tenet, a huge emphasis on communication and age-appropriate reflection. Even a 5-year-old is constantly being asked to think about their thinking.
Metacognition.
Yes. How did you figure that out? Why did you decide to build it that way? And the foundational belief that underpins all of this, which should be very reassuring to parents, is that there is no rush to formal academics. The early years are for building those foundational skills we talked about.
Okay, that philosophy directly explains its biggest perceived strength, global transferability. Why is it that IB learners are known for transferring so well between countries?
The transferability is psychological, not just about the curriculum. Because a whole system encourages questioning and being okay with uncertainty, these kids develop a deep-seated confidence in asking questions.
It doesn't matter what classroom they're in.
Or what country they're in. They feel empowered to speak up and seek understanding. That internal agency is the most valuable asset you can have when you're moving around.
And what else helps with that global mobility?
They get very good at communicating their emotions and needs effectively. All that reflection helps them find the words for how they're feeling, which is critical when you're dealing with the stress of moving.
And the inquiry-based model must help too.
Tremendously. They develop an acceptance of uncertainty. They get comfortable with not having the right answer immediately. And that's an essential skill for adapting to a new culture or a new school where you don't know the rules yet.
So for a family that moves a lot, the IB is offering an emotional and cognitive toolkit for that lifestyle.
That's the ideal outcome, yes. They move with less fear. However, and this is a big however, the model is extremely demanding on the school and the parents, which leads to some very underestimated risks.
I'm guessing the first risk is parental expectation, especially with the high fees.
It's the single biggest challenge, parental expectation for visible, measurable academics. If you're paying a premium, you often expect to see premium output worksheets, homework, clear reading levels.
Proof that you're getting your money's worth.
Exactly. So when parents see their child just playing with water and sand, they can panic. And they pressure the school to formalize the learning, which ends up completely undermining the very philosophy they paid for.
So the parents' own anxiety can sabotage the process.
It happens all the time.
What about risks inside the classroom itself?
The inquiry model can really struggle if two things are true. Either discipline is ignored, or the routines at home are weak.
Because it requires a lot of self-management from the child.
A huge amount. If a child doesn't have a basic understanding of boundaries from home, they can get lost in a very open, self-directed classroom. The flexibility of IB is not an excuse for a lack of structure.
And you mentioned a key distinction earlier, structured play versus just, aimless exposure.
This is a huge implementation pitfall. Play needs to be intentional and structured. For example, a child is building with blocks. Aimless exposure is the teacher just watching from across the room.
An intentional structured play is?
The teacher comes over, observes, sees the towers wobbly, and asks, I wonder what would happen if we put a wider block on the bottom. Let's test that idea.
So they turn a simple activity into a mini lesson on physics and engineering.
Exactly. And if the teacher doesn't have the specialized training to do that kind of scaffolding, and that training is expensive and often lacking, then the whole educational value of the PYP is lost. You're just left with the expensive brand name.
Which brings us to the cost and access reality. These schools are not everywhere, and they are not cheap.
No. They're mostly in big urban centers, and they are extremely expensive. For most of our listeners, this is just not a practical or viable option, and we have to say it again, IB is not a status necessity.
A high fee does not guarantee a stronger learner.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Some of the most curious, resilient children I've ever met come from environments where emotional safety, not prestige, was the #1 priority.
So let's do an IB reality check. Who is this model really for?
It's ideal for highly mobile families who need that transferability. It's for parents who genuinely understand and are patient with play-based learning, who value process over product. And it works best for children who thrive in open, autonomous environments.
And for everyone else?
For everyone else, choosing it just for the brand name is a very expensive gamble that might not deliver any better foundational benefits than a really well-run local school.
Which brings us perfectly to that often overlooked option, the local state boards.
The community schools, yes.
These schools are often, marginalized in these conversations. They're seen as maybe outdated or lacking.
They are. But they offer incredibly powerful and, as you said, often underestimated developmental assets that speak directly to a child's foundational needs.
Let's talk about those underrated assets. Why can a local school be such a powerful choice for building security and social trust?
The advantages are all rooted in creating a low-stress, stable environment. First, there's proximity and affordability. A child who goes to a school just down the street has a shorter commute.
Which means more time for rest, more time for play.
And less stressed parents trying to fight traffic. The financial accessibility also reduces pressure on the whole family, which creates a calmer home. These are real, tangible developmental benefits.
That an expensive school across town can never replicate.
Never. Second, they provide immediate mother tongue comfort. The child starts school in the language they think and dream in. That is a massive emotional and cognitive advantage.
And thirdly,
community continuity. They see familiar faces from their neighborhood. They share cultural norms. They build relationships that extend beyond the school gate. All of this builds that essential social trust we were talking about.
Okay, I want to dive deeper into the mother tongue point, because this is where a lot of the anxiety lives. The fear is that if you start with the mother tongue, you're blocking their ability to learn English later.
That anxiety is based on a completely outdated view of how language works in the brain. The cognitive science is overwhelming on this. A strong foundation in the primary language is the best thing you can do for a child.
Why?
Because when kids learn to think and express themselves in their most comfortable language, They think more clearly and they can express complex emotions better. They can make deeper, faster connections because they're using the language of their internal world.
So building those strong thinking muscles in the mother tongue first actually makes learning other languages easier later on.
Precisely. It allows them to build a strong sense of identity and self-worth because their home culture is being validated in the classroom. The critical takeaway here is that a robust foundation in the mother tongue supports learning English. It does not block it.
They're just learning a new label for a concept they already deeply understand.
You've got it. That's the key.
But we have to be realistic. We need to address the limitations and the need for supplementation. Where do state board schools sometimes fall short?
The areas where parents might need to step in are usually the global-facing elements. There might be a potential lack of structured exposure to English in the very earliest years,
Okay.
and they might use less dynamic teaching frameworks, which could lead to documentation continuity issues if you know you're going to move into an IB or international system later.
So parents need to be prepared to fill those specific gaps at home.
Yes, and the really empowering part is that these gaps can be supplemented at home easily and affordably. It doesn't require a costly preschool.
What does that look like in practice?
It looks like creating a dedicated 20-minute English story time
No.
every single day. It looks like putting bilingual labels on things around the house, using age-appropriate English songs and shows. The parent becomes the intentional language supplement.
That's very empowering. But what about the other concern, the one about, outdated infrastructure or maybe less trained teachers in some areas?
That's a valid systemic challenge, and this is exactly why our board-independent principle is so powerful. Because even in a system with fewer resources, a vigilant parent can elevate the environment.
We knew.
Meaning if the school day is a bit rigid, you have to make sure the hours at home are filled with open-ended play, curiosity, and connection. The less the school provides in foundational quality, the more the home must provide. You protect that curiosity engine at all costs.
Okay, so let's wrap this with a state board reality check.
Well,
When does this path work beautifully for a child?
it works beautifully when those core asset security, mother tongue comfort community are maximized. It thrives when parents consciously add stories, play, and language exposure at home. It works when the family's pressure is low and when the child's curiosity is protected above everything else.
It really just reinforces the central argument of this whole deep dive.
Early childhood does not need branding. It needs intentional care, emotional security, and a rich, responsive environment.
A perfect summary. Which brings us to our final section, the board independent strategy for ages 0 to 6.
The takeaway.
Yes, we've gone through neuroscience, policy, global frameworks, local strengths, but now, for you, the listener, let's pivot back to the actionable self-assessment. Let's forget the board names for a minute and just focus on the developmental outcomes.
This is the ultimate test. We want you to look at your child, at their environment, at the quality of their daily life, and use 4 core diagnostic questions to see how healthy their foundation really is.
Okay, the listener's action plan. Let's start with the emotional foundation. Checkpoint 1, is my child emotionally secure?
Are they able to express their needs? Can they handle small frustrations, like being told no, or losing a game without completely falling apart?
Okay. Second, the engine of learning. Checkpoint 2, are they curious and expressive?
Do they ask why and how? Do they have the confidence in any language to tell you their stories and articulate their thoughts?
Third, the engagement factor. This is about their relationship with learning. Checkpoint 3, do they enjoy learning?
Do they approach new things with enthusiasm? Or is there a sense of dread and reluctance around books, activities, or new experiences?
And finally, the measure of long-term strength. Checkpoint 4, are they confident to try and fail?
Yes. Do they see a mistake as just information for their next attempt? Or is it a paralyzing event that makes them stop trying and look for an adult to fix it? These 4 questions, they cut right through all the marketing and the labels.
They measure the actual structural integrity of the foundation.
Exactly.
So this is the ultimate so what of our deep dive. What is the definitive conclusion we can state based on the answers to those 4 questions?
The ultimate implication is simple. It's powerful, and it should be liberating for every parent listening. If the answer is a resounding yes to those questions, if your child is secure, curious, joyful, and resilient, then any subsequent board will work.
Any board, CBSE, IB, state board.
It won't matter. The child's internal foundation is strong enough to adapt, thrive, and learn within any curriculum framework you place them in.
And the flip side.
If the answer is no, If the child is anxious, afraid to fail, just performing for approval, then no board, no matter how prestigious or expensive, will fix it later. A fragile foundation cannot support a sophisticated academic building.
That puts the power and the responsibility right back where it belongs.
And the hand of the parents and the foundational teachers who are curating that daily environment demands that we teach consciously with a child's emotional state and curiosity as our two main metrics of success. The syllabus is just a tool. The environment is the builder.
That is the perfect guiding philosophy. Thank you. To end our deep dive, let's leave our listeners with one final provocative thought to carry with them.
Okay, your time in these early years is not a race to accumulate skills or to brand your child's education. It is solely a foundation building phase. Your most important job is not to push content onto them. It is to protect the integrity of their learning environment. Build that emotional security slowly. Build that curiosity gently. Trust the natural process of development. And above all, let childhood do its essential resilient work before the curriculum steps in and starts demanding performance. So reflect on where you are putting your time and energy. Is it on branded achievement? Or is it on the profound, lasting security of your child's internal world? That choice will define the learner they become.